Sexy may be giving us more credit than we had counted on, but if people find it appealing in that respect, wonderful. I think certainly the car is as contemporary as anything that's on the market. We'll continue to develop the car, and that'll be our platform to launch for the new model lines.
Motoring 92 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Motoring, and welcome to Tofino, British Columbia. We are on the west coast of Vancouver Island this week. This is salmon fishing country, but we're not here to catch a salmon. We're here to catch the unveiling of a brand new automobile. It's the Volkswagen Passat Synchro. Volkswagen is very excited about this new car, and they've invited us out here to tell us why.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, you're late.
The most direct route to Tofino, British Columbia is by seaplane. And every year, thousands of tourists arrive to catch one of the world's most celebrated fish, the salmon. Later, a short but speedy boat ride took us to our final destination in Vancouver Island to view the new Volkswagen Passat Synchro.
We've invited a select group of journalists like yourself from all over Canada, from Quebec, from Ontario, from BC. And since this is a pretty special car, we wanted to show it off in an area where we've got roads to creative driving roads, let's put it that way, because you can describe a Synchro, you can describe the all-wheel drive, the specifications, but I think you really got to drive it to know what it can do for you.
Please take advantage of the oceanside stops if you like. Pace yourselves if you need help. We're on the road. We've got VW signs in all the vehicles. Have a good drive, you guys. Enjoy it.
Volkswagen introduced the Passat in 1991 and sold just over 12,000 in Canada. The new Passat Synchro G60 looks very much like the old Passat. Could the Synchro label be just a clever marketing tool?
Absolutely not. The Passat, as you know, we brought out last year. We did reasonably well with it in the first year. We were very happy with the volume we did. Passat Synchro was a genesis of a process we've used with our Volkswagen vans over the last number of years. The Synchro drive concept in conjunction with a process we used on the Corrado called the G60 or G-Ladder, a supercharger. We've put the two together in a package for the Passat and introduced it in a new model called the G60 Synchro, which also features an ABS and a locking differential system. So it's a totally new car in terms of what it'll do, and it's a totally new concept for us in what we think our car direction is going to be. Synchro drive of itself is a concept that allows all four wheels on the automobile to optimize their tractability. If you're on conditions where you have snow or ice or slippery roads or sandy roads, the Synchro system will allow, through differential action on the front and rear of the car, a selective wheel to get the maximum amount of tractable power. Now, it sounds complicated, but really what it breaks down to is we have a viscous coupling between the two differentials, front and rear, and it'll eliminate wheel slip between the two axles. If there's one wheel that has more traction than the other three, it'll get the majority of the power. And that is an instantaneous transfer of power. No levers to switch, no buttons to turn. It's all automatic. There's no maintenance to the system. And it allows you to drive without worrying about slipping on roads. It does it by itself.
There have been some lean years for Volkswagen, especially here in North America. One of the criticisms of Volkswagen is that they've designed bland cars. Is that a fair criticism, and are we seeing a change in thinking?
Yeah. I suppose I've heard the same thing. We are a conservative company, there's no question. I said earlier we're trying to provide cars that have honest value, cars that you can buy today and feel like you can own for a number of years and be comfortable with your purchase, that the resale value will be realized when you sell the car. Volkswagen has obviously seen the opportunity to expand our model range. We've gone from the genesis of Rabbit to Golf. Corrado brought us into the 90s as far as we were really concerned. It brought in a sort of a leading edge technology with a look that was in keeping with whatever was being brought on the market. Passat again brings us that step closer to a more broad-based consumer.
The trunk on this Bonneville is very well thought out. When you open the deck lid up, it goes so far back there's no chance of catching your head on any of these sharp edges. The low liftover gives you great access to anything you've got in here, and they even thought to put a pass-through in for skiers. The only problem comes if you're much shorter than I am, reaching the deck lid to shut it could pose a problem.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we take a look at a couple of totally restyled GMs. Now this is the 1992 Pontiac Bonneville. A little later on, we're going to have a look at the Oldsmobile Delta 88. Now while these two vehicles are technically identical, they are worlds apart in terms of appeal.
To mark the 35th year of the Bonneville nameplate, Pontiac have introduced a totally new model, new as in from the tyres up. At a recent product launch, GM insisted that the new car was evolutionary. Given the radical changes like a new supercharged model that features traction control, revolutionary would seem to be a better description. In any event, the new Bonneville is a car that's going to have to be reckoned with. The latest edition is larger, features a contemporary fluid look and benefits from more power. The refined 3800 V6 engine now produces 170 horsepower and 220 pounds-feet of torque. On the skid pad, this translated into 0 to 100k times of just under 10 seconds, which for a large car is reasonable. However, the real benefit is realized on the open road. The mid-range performance is very good. The 4-speed electronically controlled transmission provides smooth upshifts and is always willing to kick down as and when the need arises. The new SSEI model features the same 3800 V6. However, the addition of an Eaton blower bumps the power to 205 horses, and it comes with a dual-mode version of the same automatic transmission, as well as a very aggressive-looking ground effects package. Although the SC model tested as a family sedan, it feels very much like a sports sedan. The reason being the optional driver enthusiast sports package, which is worth every penny of the $1,400 it's going to cost you. The package consists of a revised axle ratio which helps acceleration, better suspension and tyres which in the pylon test improve things immensely. The firmer suspension limits the amount of body roll and the larger tyres reduce the amount of understeer. Surprisingly, this is achieved without sacrificing too much in the ride department. The last and perhaps most important part of this package is the 4th generation Tevis anti-lock brake system. In the brake tests, we required just 117 feet to stop, and each and every stop was straight, fade-free, and definitely predictable. Inside, the Bonneville is roomy with generous head and leg room in all positions. The front bucket seats have broad cushions, adequate lateral support, and plenty of rearward travel, meaning the car will accommodate the tallest of drivers with ease. The dashboard is a simple, functional design that places all controls within easy reach, the exception being the turn signal lever, which sticks out at a very awkward angle. The radio, complete with CD, features dual controls, the conventional ones and some mounted in the steering wheel hub. The hub-mounted ones allow you to play with the radio without having to take your eyes off the road. The gauges are well laid out and easy to interpret. However, at night, the orange backlighting and orange pointers get a bit hard on the eyes. There is a roof-mounted center console that features a 12-volt outlet for, dare I say it, a radar detector, as well as a storage bin and a compartment for your sunglasses. Our test vehicle had a few minor glitches that spoiled the fit and finish. The trip odometer did not work, the power trunk release stuck in the open position, and one of the rear spoiler retaining nuts had been puttied into place. As I mentioned, the Olds 88 is technically identical to the Bonneville. However, the conservative styling and more conventional split bench seat and dash design will ensure GM won't frighten off older buyers. The biggest criticism with the Olds is the dash design though. There are 1,001 fiddly buttons squashed into the right side of the dash opening. If they're aiming the 88 at an older crowd, the simplified dash found in the Bonneville is the way they should have gone. My pet peeve on the Bonneville has to do with this fixed quarter glass. First of all, it forced the designers to move the mirrors too far back down the door, making them more awkward to use than they really need to be. Secondly, if you've got the window open just a smidgen when it's raining, you'd better be prepared for a free shower, because everything that gets wiped off the window ends up in here. Anyway, now to the scoreboard for a rundown on the 1992 Pontiac Bonneville. For a large heavy car, the Bonneville fared reasonably well in the pylon test. Both the amount of body roll and understeer have been kept to an acceptable minimum. What separates this car from a boulevard cruiser is the optional Enthusiast Sport package. The fourth generation Tevis anti-lock brake system provided flawless stops time and again. The system displayed minimal brake pedal kickback when activated and only engaged under the severest of circumstances. Stopping distances averaged a commendable 117 feet from 80k. The improved 3800 V6 engine provided brisk, if not quick, acceleration. We required just under 10 seconds to eclipse the 100k mark. The true benefit of this engine is found in the mid-range performance. Overtaking is always accomplished with ease. The seats and suspension provided a compliant and comfortable ride with little or no road or wind noise. However, on the Bonneville, a deep throaty exhaust drone is a constant companion, even when cruising in overdrive. The Olds Delta 88 did not exhibit this annoying trait. During the test, we averaged 11.8 litres per 100 kilometres or 24 miles per gallon. On the highway, this figure improves to almost 30 miles per gallon, which for a large full-size family sedan is more than respectable. Pontiac's flagship is embarking on a new era with improvements in almost every area. More power, more space and better fuel economy should ensure the return of traditional Bonneville buyers, as well as attracting a few new ones.
We've left Tofino in the west coast of Vancouver Island and we have moved inland. We're now just outside of Port Alberni in a place they call the Cathedral Grove. Now they tell me that this is one of the few remaining areas on Vancouver Island where stands of virgin timber still remain. A lot of these trees are Douglas firs and many of them, like this one, are close to 800 years old and they grow to over 250 feet tall. Incredible. Anyway, it's now time to leave the forest and head to the garage and join a man who I don't know how much he knows about trees, but Bill Gardner sure knows a lot about cars.
Over the past couple of weeks, several people have pointed out to me that we've never talked about steering systems here on the show. So in the next couple of segments, we're going to talk about the most common steering systems found on today's vehicles. Most of today's front-wheel drive vehicles have rack and pinion steering, with a few exceptions. For example, the Buick Riviera, Olds Tornado, and Cadillac Eldorado are front-wheel drive cars that have recirculating ball type steering systems, which is the most common system found on rear-wheel drive cars. Now, conversely, there's a few exceptions there. For example, rear-wheel drive Chevettes and Ford Aerostar vans have rack and pinion steering and they're rear-wheel drive. So, of course, like every rule, there's exceptions. But today we're looking at a recirculating ball type steering system. Many of you know this unit better as a, quote, steering box. And we can see the steering box assembly mounted on the left side frame rail of this car. You can see that it's a fairly husky, stout unit, and all the components are pretty beefy looking. This thing will even survive a pretty good collision. And about the only problems that you usually have with them are minor fluid leaks. You can see that this one's just a little bit wet in this area. The car is about 12 years old, so that amount of leakage is sort of to be expected. Now, when Steve turns our steering wheel up top, you can see the shaft coming down from the steering wheel, rotating what's known as the worm shaft inside that steering box. The Pitman shaft comes down in this direction out of the steering box and goes onto our Pitman arm. And it's this unit that gives us the mechanical advantage over the front wheels to allow us to steer the car. Now, this particular unit is power assisted, so we can see a power assist hose coming from our steering pump, and that's what helps to give us a nice light feel to the steering. We also have a pretty intricate linkage involved in this system. We have a center link, this part I'm pointing out right here, that links the whole thing together. We have an idler arm on the right side of the car that steadies the right side of the linkage. We have two inner tie rod ends, a couple of adjusting sleeves that we would turn, much like a turnbuckle, to adjust the toe on this car when we're doing a wheel alignment, and a set of outer tie rod ends that eventually link us up with the spindles and the front wheels. Now, this system is quite complex. You can see a number of points on this vehicle that need to be greased. I just wiped that grease fitting clean. And that's an important part of maintenance on this type of vehicle. So all of these joints need to be looked at periodically, checked for wear or looseness or damage. And if they're okay, they need to be re-greased. And quite frequently, if you're driving in wet, slushy conditions, it's necessary to add grease to these. And we just wipe the fitting clean, attach our grease gun, and squirt it in. Now you can see that the grease is starting to come out of that joint. And it's that grease that lubricates the joint and helps to keep water and dirt out of there. The fact that that grease is in there sort of affects a bit of a seal. And there's still quite a few of today's cars where this isn't very well sealed, and it's actually the grease itself along with that rubber cup that keeps that joint alive. So very important to look at these vehicles and periodically grease them. Till next week when we talk about rack and pinion systems, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 92.
And it's smaller in size. We didn't want to look at some of the more exotic battery research that's going on that may be in the 10 to 15 years out that might keep us from going into production with this kind of a vehicle.
If you have any comments or stories you'd like to share with us, drop us a line at Motoring 92. Post Office Box 284, Station J, Toronto, Ontario. M4J 4Y1.
You know, when someone buys a brand new car, he or she usually falls in love with at least one feature of that car. My wife happens to love front seat warmers. Well, I've got a feature that I happen to love in this Passat Synchro. Now, I'm the kind of guy that always leaves his windows down when he locks the car up for the night, and it always rains. Well, that can't happen to you with the Passat Synchro, and I'll show you why. As usual, all my windows are down. But when I go to lock up the car at night, not only do all the locks lock up automatically, so do my windows. Not bad. Well, it's now time to join Steve Grant. And you know, out here in Vancouver Island, they, like the rest of us, are very concerned about the environment. And with that in mind, Steve has a story about a car that could be termed the environmentally friendly vehicle of the future.
It can go further and faster than any previous production-oriented electric vehicle. It can go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 8 seconds. And it has all the comforts and convenience of a modern automobile.
It's called the Impact, an electric vehicle designed after another successful General Motors project, the solar-powered Sunracer.
The fact that we won the race in Australia in '87 by some 2.5 days gave us a strong feeling that we had a pretty good lock on some technology. And so it looked like a kind of a good evolution to examine a pure electric car.
Because battery power is at a premium, the range everyone appears to be working with is about 100 miles a charge, the engineers had to pay careful attention to aerodynamics.
In this car, the drag is very, very important compared to a gasoline car. With our large battery pack in there, we have the equivalent energy of about a gallon of gasoline. So you can see that it's like trying to make a car that gets 100 miles per gallon. So we have to push on efficiency everywhere we possibly can. The one thing that we didn't compromise at all on is the acceleration performance. We wanted to make it something that people would sort of think twice and say, wow, that's pretty fast. And so we had an initial target of 8.0 seconds for 0 to 60 miles an hour, and we actually met that target.
We ran a comparison between a Mazda Miata and a Nissan 300 ZX car on a drag race, if you will. And 0 to 60, the Impact will walk away from these two cars. And as we did that, it really moved the electric vehicle from the golf cart kind of mentality to this is a viable candidate for merging with traffic, fitting into the current driving requirements that we have on today's road systems.
Not to be outdone, the folks over at Ford are directing their energies towards an electric vehicle based on the European Escort van.
This vehicle is approximately the size vehicle that we think might be suitable for electric vehicles. It is a vehicle that can be used by commercial fleets, and that's the intended user. But this electric vehicle is not a golf cart. This electric vehicle is a vehicle that has acceleration and performance of approximate value as to the ones that you're driving now.
General Motors and Ford, of course, aren't the only ones going electric. Nissan, for example, is working on a quick charge battery. In fact, by the year 2000, it's safe to say that you'll know someone who owns an electric vehicle. The only question, I guess, is who will make it first?
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
This vehicle has four-wheel drive. Now, some manufacturers like to refer to this as all-wheel drive to distinguish it from off-road trucks. But I figured the vehicle's got four wheels and they're all driven, so four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, what's the difference? Now, Subaru and Audi led the way with four-wheel drive passenger cars, but now almost every manufacturer has at least one model, including Volkswagen. The question is, should you consider four-wheel drive? Well, maybe this isn't the right kind of weather to be talking about it, but now is when most cars are being bought. Now, if you're an avid skier and you have to get to the slopes, four-wheel drive will certainly give you better traction in the snow. But I want to caution you. The truckers have an old adage about four-wheel drive. All it does for you is get you stuck deeper, farther from home. In passenger cars, you might rewrite that to say all it does is let you have your accident at a higher speed. The reason? Simple, overconfidence. Four-wheel drive gives you such great straight-ahead acceleration that you may not realize how slippery the road is. When you get to a corner or you have to stop, you may find that your four-wheel drive cannot rewrite the laws of physics. Besides, four-wheel drive is more expensive to buy and it's more expensive to maintain. And another thing, the base model of this car comes with front-wheel drive. If you're out in weather that front-wheel drive can't get you through, maybe you should stay at home. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, I told you at the top of the program that Vancouver Island in British Columbia is a salmon fishing country. Well, I just couldn't go without at least giving it a shot. And we're just outside of Campbell River, and I'm out here with Paul, and we're trying our luck at catching some salmon. Unfortunately, though, you won't be able to stick around to see me pulling that 35-pound spring salmon. Right, Paul?
You bet.
35. But who knows? Maybe next week. Maybe next week we'll have some videotape highlights. Anyway, it is time to go. But before we go, I want to thank Volkswagen Canada for bringing us out here and giving us a look at their new Passat Synchro and also giving us a look at this beautiful part of the country. Well, that is it for now. We'll see you next week for more stories on cars and the people who drive them.
Motoring 92 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.